It is my understanding that there are four stages of I consciousness. From the start, we can say that most people don't have any understanding or any experience of their personal self, the conscious I. So there's no conscious observer. And we can say when we are at that state, we just float with the stream of consciousness. Whatever appears, whatever impulses we get, we just do what seems most appropriate according to our basic needs. We live according to the roles that life gives us. We become parents and we have friends and we have a job that we try to fulfill. We could also say that our life is governed by our major roles in life, and we could also call it the ego. And when we have formed an ego, when we become mature individuals, then we has created something like a boat, and this boat we can navigate on the stream of consciousness. We don't just follow every whim and every desire that comes up in our consciousness, but we try to be responsible human beings. But still, we don't have any internal conscious observer where we really reflect on our thinking. We can say that this state is characterized like we live in a city that is always clouded. In this city, we never see the sun because there's always clouds. But then sometimes, one of the inhabitants of this city, they climb up and reach above the skies and see the sun, and they come down and say that the light that is here actually comes from a source above. But all the other inhabitants, they just deny. They think that he must be mad because there's just light. And so it is when we haven't yet found the inner observer, the light of our being, then we just take the light for granted. We don't understand that there actually is a source of light within. But when we start introspecting, when we start observing what's going on inside us, we finally, at some point, understand that we can start observing what's going on inside of us. We can start observing that there are inner voices, that we are influenced by inner psychological states, and now somewhat some kind of an observer start appearing within the center of our being. We can say that the light is still diffused, it's not concentrated, but it's a beginning. But we have to understand that this observing faculty is not stabilized in any ways. It's still very, very a foggy observer. However, if we take up a practice of disidentification and self identification, start identifying with consciousness itself, then the observers start to become much more clear. We start understanding what's going on, and we can differentiate between consciousness itself and the content of consciousness. And this is where we also suddenly find out that the silence that emerges out of this practice is actually who we are. And I had that, you could call it awakening at some time in my life. I was starting wondering why there was always or very often a silence within my head. Nothing happened, and I was very puzzled by it. But at some point, I really realized that this was actually me. I was the silent inner observing agent. And this was a big revelation for me. It was not a uh, transcendent experience. It was just an immediately a recognition that I was this silent observing agent within the midst of my psychological environment. And from there, the continual striving to stabilize the void of consciousness will bring us to this place where at some point this silent observing background will become more and more present, more and more permanent within us. And this is where we have finally realized the full potential of our conscious I. It will be a center in us that is detached, free from content. It will be a loving observer and a dynamic awareness. I think the viewers will understand that this is an ideal, something that I have not reached. I have had glimpses of this as I just presented with my experience with the beginning of my tinnitus. Let us now turn our attention to the higher self. As I've already explained, the personal self, the conscious I, is an emanation of the higher self. So it's a reflection in the mental function of consciousness and will. I think a very good understanding is when, as Aurobindo, the Indian mystic in Pondicherry, speaks about the different types of Purusha, the mental Purusha, the vital Purusha, being the emotional Purusha, and the physical Purusha. And it is, the Purusha is and the pure consciousness, the transcendent pure consciousness and will is reflecting itself at different levels. And what we call the personal self is a reflection of the transcendent self in the mental function. It's a rather complicated idea that I cannot go into further detail with here. But let's go to the higher self and try to define what is the higher self. And as already said, it's ineffable. You cannot really describe what the higher self is, but we do it anyway, as you can say, pointing out some valid points that will motivate people to have the experiences themselves.